Hello, this is Mateusz speaking, and welcome to my podcast/video. So this is a podcast I decided to create, and this is the first episode of that podcast. So my name is Mateusz, and I came to Sweden like almost 2 years ago, and I struggle with creating a business, creating opportunities, and being equal in this country. So I decided to create a podcast that will speak to people like me, to people that come to Sweden or come to any other country in Europe or anywhere else. We'll just speak on how to do it, how to make business in another country, and how to make ends meet. So today's video is the first episode of the whole series that I will wish to create, and I will be talking with Megan. Megan came to Sweden from US. She has Polish origin, which is a funny thing. And she will talk about creating a podcast, creating and running podcast, and how to interview people. I really hope that you will enjoy that. Please leave me a comment and let's stay in touch. Hello everybody. Hello everybody who comes here to get some knowledge from Megan. This is Megan, my guest in today's video and perhaps maybe even a podcast if you're listening to that in your headphones while in traffic or something like that. So this product, this movie, this recording is kind of a thing in the production itself, because I invited you to teach me something about interviewing people, about how to technically do a podcast and how to talk with people, because you do that.
I do. I have a podcast about customer success for the company that I currently work for called PlanHat. Mm-hmm. And we do 2 episodes every month. Mm-hmm. And we've done it in a way where it's very budget friendly. So if you're on a budget, I can help you figure out tools that are good to use, audio devices that are good to use, and really small little ways to make your podcast sound like it's something super fancy and professional. But it's really just like you doing A to Z, everything.
Okay, so let's start from maybe before we get to this podcast stuff, just maybe say a little thing about yourself, mm-hmm. like personally.
Okay.
Is this a good question? Like,
yeah.
You know, like, yeah.
No, actually, so that's kind of one of the first questions I always ask. So of course you want to give the audience something to know about the person you're interviewing, kind of mm-hmm. give them some credibility. Mm-hmm. You want to give them a bit about their background. So I always ask, like, tell us a bit about, yourself and how you found yourself doing what you're doing today. Because it's kind of fun to hear that story. It gives mm-hmm. you some background about that person, maybe makes them a little bit more relatable to an audience member. Mm-hmm. And it gives them some credibility as well. It's like a chance for them to kind of let the audience know what they've done and whatnot.
Yeah, great. So let's get to your person, because
right.
This is not coincidence that I invited you, because you are American,
yes,
but a little bit Polish also.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit Polish.
A little bit Polish, born in America and came to Sweden. Mm-hmm. You live in Stockholm, and this like. Not nomad lifestyle, but how is it called? The person that is.
Oh, you say nomad. Nomad, yeah, nomadic. No. Kind of like moving from place to place, drifting a bit. Not drifting.
Yeah, because that's something I really feel like talking about in my YouTube channel and the podcast. Mm-hmm. Talking with people that are constantly changing places, and they have to change their mindset between countries, because probably it's much different between America and Sweden, right?
Yeah, you don't think that it will be, but then there's a lot of little things in your everyday life that just kind of mm-hmm. surprise you that are different. So yeah. So you want me to talk about just a little bit about why I moved to Sweden, how I got here?
Exactly.
Okay,
and
cool.
how you find yourself here.
All right. So, I like to move a lot. Since I graduated high school in the U.S., I moved to New York for a year. Then I went to Chicago and did school there, and then finished up school back in Florida, where my family lives. And then after I graduated college, I decided I needed to get out, I was like, okay, I live in the US. I've always wanted to travel. I've always wanted to experience different cultures. And what's the best way to do that other than living somewhere else? And so then it became this big research project of where the best place in Europe is to live. And
why Europe?
Because, like, I don't know, it's out of all the countries that I wanted to go to, and it's still a very Western world. I still wanted that very Western world. Okay. Yeah. And I know, like, you have Australia, but I don't know, Australia seems really far. And Europe has so many more languages, like, so close to each other than I've ever experienced before. So it's like, you know, Polish, German, then you have French, and then Spanish, Portuguese, Dutch, Swedish, Norwegian, Sweden. You have everything. It's really cool. So there's a lot of diversity. So yeah, I guess Europe has always been on my mind. And then after I kind of did some research, thought about France for a while because I'd done an exchange when I was younger. But it became like, oh, where has like a really good economy, good tech scene, good English speakers, which probably is like cheating myself out of learning Swedish, but it's totally fine. And has a really good quality of life. Because I think in the US, it's a really great situation still compared to everywhere else. But as far as like women's rights and things like that, Sweden really, really knows how to do it. So it became Sweden.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And how do you find yourself here? Personally and professionally?
So I first came over as an au pair, and that was great. I liked it. Learned a lot about culture and some weird words in Swedish that I don't know why, it's like weird ass kids words that you never thought you'd learn. And then through that, I kind of found a job on accident, like a happy accident. And now I'm working for this company, Planhat, for, almost 2 years now. And then I'm been here doing that. Met a Swedish dude. Now it's just kind of rolling.
That's awesome. And what was the hardest thing for you?
I think the hardest thing is you come and you don't have your network. Yeah, and that's I think tough. Right. Yeah, I think you've experienced that. Where maybe going to other countries, you never know what the social expectation is, but I think in Sweden particularly it's a bit more difficult to develop those strong connections and that social life. And then as an adult in general, it gets harder. You're not a kid anymore. You can't be like, oh, do you want to play with me? It doesn't work that way. So I think just that was the hardest thing, is trying to build up a network of friends. And yeah. And from the business point of view, the network is everything. So for me, that was the hardest thing, definitely, to start from scratch. And I had this in my mind. I don't want a day job. I don't want a full-time job. I'm gonna do it my way. I'm gonna be an entrepreneur, and that's very, very hard to do in the new place. So if you were to move somewhere else, let's say to Poland or Germany or something like that, how would you do that? Where would you start after moving there to get to the good living level and so on? I think one thing that I benefit from here that I would do differently if I moved to another country is really learn the language. Here, you can get a job and you don't have to know Swedish. Everyone is amazing in English. You have a lot of international customers these days, so to be able to speak to customers I don't have to know Swedish. I have customers in Spain and France and Hong Kong. It's it's different. So I think I would really learn the language. But I think the first thing I would do is probably learn the language and go to meetups or something. Just kind of get in and see what's out there. I really admire my stepbrother, who is really amazing at just putting himself out there. If there's not a network, he will make one. He has started groups. He has gone to groups, and I think I would probably follow in those footsteps and really try to get in, and then also learn the language for sure. Yeah.
Learn the language and find a job instead of trying to hit the wall with your head. Yeah. That's my recommendation.
I think being an entrepreneur, when you don't have the network, is a bit difficult.
It doesn't really make sense. Going to the job, it's not so bad if it's even if you really don't want, but it's just a temporary thing for you to survive.
Yeah.
I find that was my mistake. And yeah, we'll see how it goes.
I think like also a job can be a stepping stone to something else. It's nice because you can
Definitely.
build up a network, and then for some reason, like whatever happens next, like that was helped by, you know, the previous job. And then even if, you know, later on you want to become an entrepreneur, you have the backup of like the people that you now know either from work or from, if you did like, you know, school or something, you have that in the back. So it's kind of nice to know that like you can build on it and it's a stepping stone. And we have so much time to work in our lives that it's like, and maybe not all of us want to. I know your plan was to be retired, like by the time you were almost 40. So, but it's like, yeah, you have so much time and to like take small steps towards what you really want. And like, it would be great to be an entrepreneur one day. I think it'd be fantastic. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so let's have a quick break and we'll get to the main subject, which is podcasting.
Yay! Okay.
Yay. Part 2, podcasting. So welcome to the second part of the podcast, and now we're going to talk more about the podcast itself. So let's say I have this idea. I want to talk with people and to people that are expats. In the break, we learned this word that that was the word I was looking for. I want to talk to expats and I want to talk with expats that are focused on business and entrepreneurship or technology and things like that. So I have this idea. And what now?
What now? So I like writing everything down and preparing it. So what I did first is, when we initially thought of the idea for the podcast, it was getting kind of a summary together of what it is, your goals, your mission, so that one, like when you reach out to people, you can be very clear about, this is what I want to do, this is my goal. Would you like to be a part of it, essentially? So that, you know, they can have a guideline, you can have a guideline, and it gives it a bit more. It gives it a bit more weight. And then, so that was kind of like the first thing. And then when you're reaching out to people initially, I mean, people like to be interviewed. Like some, you know, people enjoy that, you know, it's a fun thing to do. So luckily when you reach out to people, you're probably not going to be met with a lot of resistance. People will be like, oh yeah, that sounds kind of fun. But yeah, so I think like, but giving them kind of a little rundown of like, this is what is kind of like the theme. And when you're first, you know, doing your first initial episodes, you're not going to have anything to show them really. But yeah, like eventually you will. So, you know, later on you can like send links to previous podcasts. People hopefully have like heard of it before. But preparing that way. And then after you've kind of prepared that way, kind of, just kind of prepare your questions for your first one. Like, but also know that that first episode is going to change so much, and how you feel about
this first episode is gonna or is not gonna change so much.
I said that in the wrong way. So like from the first episode, your podcast is going to change so much. So like that first episode, like I listened to the first episode of the podcast that I did, and I'm like, oh God, it's like, oh okay, like it didn't have like music to it yet. It didn't have like
a proper with YouTube with videos.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. I remember it exactly because it was pretty spontaneous. It was the day when I talked with my boss and I quit my job and I said, like, I'm gone. And then I just drove somewhere with my car to the nature and I took I recorded with my phone and I was like, guys, I'm quitting my job. I just quit my job and like I basically don't know what to do with my life. And I started my YouTube channel like that. And when I see that, it's terrible, but I was so proud about that.
Yeah, but you have to have something to build off of. And
of course.
Yeah, to know that like, yeah, that first episode, like I was so nervous interviewing this person. I was like, am I going to say something dumb? Are they going to be like, what the hell is this question? Like I was so, even though like, you know, you send them the questions before, but you want to have like good follow-up. You're like, am I actively listening enough? Like, okay, what's the next question? You're like constantly battling, like actively listening and preparing for the next thing. And then like wanting to have like a really good follow-up. So the first one's stressful no matter what. At least for me, it was very like nerve-wracking. I think I talked to like the new CEO of Marketo, this like big company in that's US based. So like for me, I was terrified. But yeah, I think like definitely doing enough preparation, like enough room for yourself to know that, okay, something could go wrong and I can adjust and change as I go, but have your questions, know your goals, know your mission, and then go from there.
Okay, great. Can we like talk a little bit more about these goals and mission? How should it look like? What do you think about that? Like, do I need to focus so much on that, or should I just do more, like reach to people?
No, I mean, like,
give me an example. Give me your goal and your mission.
Yeah, so like for me, I kind of like a personal one, and then like there's the actual professional one. So with the podcast, like our goal, the company kind of goal was to like explore more topics of customer success and kind of bring to light like different opinions and different ways of looking at customer success, because it's kind of enigmatic at this moment. It's kind of like you're still defining it in a lot of ways, and it's evolving. So bringing in experts to learn, like basically helping people learn more about different ways of doing customer success. And for me, I'm pretty new to customer success as well. Like when I started this job, that's when I started customer success. So my own personal goal, my own personal kind of why I was doing this was like, I want to have access to these people to ask them the questions that I want to ask, you know, and and that was kind of, and then those kind of whys, those goals kind of melded, you know, like these are questions that I hope, you know, people are asking themselves about customer success, and then these are questions that I'm asking myself. So that was kind of my why. But you don't need to like post it anywhere, you know, just like have it for yourself. I would say like kind of,
so that you know what you do.
Exactly. It kind of helps drive everything, just to make sure you're always focused on why you're doing it. And then it keeps the content, like, I think, passionate and live. It's like, oh, okay, this is why I'm doing it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so that's going to be the end of the part 2.
Okay.
In a second, we'll get to part 3, which will be technical stuff, like mics and apps and so on.
Okay.
So, see you in a second. Part 3, tech stuff. So we have our goals, we have our mission, vision, and so on, and now we got to start doing stuff, right?
Yeah.
And we don't want to spend money on that because it's a big unknown. We don't know how it goes. Like, yeah. What now?
And so yeah, like if you don't have the resources to do it, like, you know, but you still want to do it well, right? So if you're the only person doing it.
But basically, there is no point of investing like a couple of thousand crowns or like hundreds of dollars before even first interview, right?
Yeah, no. So what I did, or what we did, is like I like researched some mics, and I had experience with like a Yeti mic before, which is good, solid podcasting mic. Yeti makes a lot of great ones for that purpose. But then, you know, of course, as like this becomes more of a livelihood thing, you could get like a really nice mic that's like hanging and doing all these things. But like for me right now, with what I'm doing, the Yeti mic, it sits there.
And what's the cost of that?
$100, $100 US.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So it's pretty cheap. It's like a one-time investment, right, for $100. And it sits there, and you can do like a couple different things with it. There's what we like called polar patterns. So if you're interviewing someone one-on-one, you can do like the bidirectional polar pattern. So it picks up here and here, blocks out, and then you can do some interesting things with it. It's a nice mic, and it works for like you're just starting. You're not super technical. You don't need somebody like recording audio separately and doing all these interesting things. Just like it works. So that's like the big investment that I did. And then music. So this actually came later on because music makes everything so much more nice and fun, right?
So do you have music through the whole podcast in the background?
No. So I just I start with it, and then it dies down, and there's like music underlying in the intro. And then I do like a little like transition beat, and then it goes into the interview, and then at the end I do the same thing. I think it's nice to have it in the intro. It just is a nice pickup, like a good energy thing before getting into the actual interview, and then at the end it kind of builds again. So music, I think, is a great way to make it feel like there's like a lot going on. There's like a lot of production going on, when maybe it's just like I just bought music and like okay, like now it's there. Oh, it fades out and then fades back, and like, you know, it's a great way to like make it more fun and sound more professional. And that you can go to like Audio Jungle, which is this basically like, I don't know if you've experienced. It's like a repository of like.
Yeah.
Is repository even the right word? Oh my god, if I said the wrong word.
It's like the bank.
Suppository is like the bad word. I think not the bad word, but like okay, repository. It's like it's like a bank of music that you can buy basically and license for like
$10-15.
Yeah, depending on what you want to do with it. So they kind of give you like, what are you going to do with it? And like, I think I bought ours for like $30, $30 US, and that's a one-time thing as well. So like, all in all, we're still under $200 here.
Yeah.
And then you have like your SoundCloud account, which SoundCloud then you can hook up into iTunes. That's, you know, I think $99 a month though, so that can add up. But if you want to have a lot of storage, I say SoundCloud is good. And then then I use Audacity, which is a free audio editing tool, and that works great for me. I don't need anything more than Audacity, so. Good job.
So just plug the mic to your computer and hit record.
Yeah.
Audacity.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're doing an in-person interview, that's how I do it. But then if I'm doing a like a Skype interview or something, I can choose to record with my external mic from the preferences of whatever video thing I'm doing. So I use Zoom a lot. So Zoom allows you to choose to use like my Yeti mic. So you can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when it comes to me, I think I'm going for even cheaper option right now. So I have this Rode mic that I got for the camera and for like making movies, which was like, I don't know, $60 probably.
That's amazing. Like that. It's a good mic too. It's a good.
I hope so. Yeah. And yeah, I had my old how it's called, Laval, like this pocket.
Oh, I know what you're. Oh gosh,
this
why can't I remember the word?
Fancy mic that like you stick to your clothes, yeah. I had my old one that costed like $10 a couple of years ago, and recently I bought this fancy one for $80 or something like that. And today we wanted to record it with that, and it didn't work.
Failed us.
So you don't always need to invest; just get what you have. And what is very interesting, recently I've been recording a movie for my client, and at the end of the movie they had a like short summary interview, and they just used iPhone. They just took the phone and they were speaking like this, and the sound was perfect. It's
kind of crazy. It's actually insane how good phones are getting at video and audio. Really. It's a little uncomfortable. You're like, oh my god.
Like seriously, lately I've been talking with one girl in the bank that I met her, and she started talking to me because she saw my camera, and she's planning to start making some videos, some YouTube and so on, and like she's thinking about this camera and this like $1,000, $2,000. I'm like, what phone do you have? iPhone X.
Just
fine. Like, please don't buy anything before you make 5 videos.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think the same with the podcast and mics and so on. Just start doing things first. Use your phone. Use anything what you have.
Yeah.
And you will be much further than.
Because you're learning in those moments as well. You do not need to be like full out professional when you first start. You do not need to have absolutely everything. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Yeah.
Okay, so that would sum up. Yeah, is it a good? Yeah. That would sum up the part 3, which was a technical thing, and we will get to interviewing people and talking with people.
Part 4.
Part 4.
Part 4. Interviewing people.
So welcome to part 4 with Megan.
Yay!
Now we'll talk about how to actually interview people, what questions to ask, what not to ask, and how to make it interesting and how to keep a good flow.
Yeah, so, I mean, what you ask and what not to ask, I think, is it's always going to be dependent on, like, who you're interviewing, what the topic is, and whatnot. But I think, like, what questions to ask, like, I like to do, like, kind of a pre-call with everyone before. And if not that, then I'd like to, of course, just send them the questions. But like, so, pick a topic, pick something that's going to kind of focus your interview, of course. But then like prepare the questions, send them to them before. And then if there's something, I always tell them if there's something that they're uncomfortable with, or like there's something that they don't think that they can answer very well, I take it off and they let me know and we remove it. Or, if there's something that they think, okay, I'm really passionate about this, then I can kind of add it. So I think like what questions you ask is going to be, of course, like guided by the topic and who you're interviewing, what their background is, what expertise they have. But like, yeah, like, of course, let them kind of know a guideline of questions that you have beforehand. And I think unless that it's like your topic is, you have like a very personal podcast going on, like stay away from anything terribly personal. If it's just about business, like don't like ask about, what's happening.
Okay, but when it comes to preparing questions, you're a fan of preparing everything before. I'm a fan with like go with the flow. You will see how the interview goes, and so on.
Yeah.
So, how do you prepare to interview?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's your way of doing it, which is fun too. It depends, I think, of course. We know each other, like it's comfortable, and sometimes you can't prepare. Sometimes there's things that come up and the conversation takes its own path, and that's how you have to let it happen. But for the type of podcast that I do, preparing is probably the most important thing, because it allows the person on the other end, because I'm asking pretty in-depth questions sometimes about customer success, so it gives that person time to really think through and prepare. So how to do that, I have a sheet that I send everybody, and I say like, okay, this is how the podcast is broken up to. I have, part 1, which is kind of like, it's about you, getting to know you. And then part 2 is kind of the topic that we're going to cover that day about customer success. And it includes all the questions underneath that. And then the last part is I always like to add or ask a kind of a more general advice question. And sometimes I tailor it to them in this way. But for a while I was asking, what is your definition of customer success? But we've kind of moved on from that question. So yeah, I send everyone kind of like a list of like, this is how the podcast is going to flow. This is how we break it down, and here are the questions for each section. Sometimes we get to all of them, sometimes we don't. Sometimes, of course, I add more follow-up questions. And then I always like, at the beginning, I'm like, hey, like if you say anything or you mess up, like I can cut this, don't worry. So you gotta give them like whew, they can breathe. I had one woman, she's so cute, I love her so much. She was like, and I was like, calm down, totally fine. I'll cut this whole thing. No one will ever know that it was a mess. She's like, okay, thank you. So giving them that safety net. Yeah.
And when it comes to me, I didn't prepare any question to you, but I prepared mentally. I compared myself to yourself, where I am, where you are, and what's this path between my position and your position, and how to fill the blanks. Like so. A lot I asked you before. That's how I prepared that. But it's all this like mics and interviewing people and so on and so on. That's this difference that I want to fill this gap, and that was my general idea for the podcast, and that's how I prepared.
Yeah, and that works because, I mean, sometimes you have to just kind of let the conversation take its own path. I think
so.
Yeah. So.
And I'm just lazy, maybe.
Nah.
Or
we know each other, so it's super chill.
Yeah.
When you don't know the person, it's kind of like, you get stressed. But.
Yeah, probably if I had a chance to interview, Elon Musk, I would do nothing for a month, then just preparing.
Sitting there and be like researching everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, do you have anything to add about?
I mean, I'm still learning so much, so I enjoy like talking to people, but I don't have a background in journalism or anything like that. But it's been a fun learning process, and I think just being a person who is curious and likes to ask questions, that'll get you through.
Okay, so I have 2 questions. First is what to do when you drift apart from the main subject.
Yeah.
Do you go after that and let it happen, or do you constantly try to get back?
So, of course, I think that depends. So if your podcast is kind of a general thing where it's more loose, like you're not hard set on a topic. Like I listen to some podcasts that are, that's what happens. They become very tangential. They just kind of here and here. But for my podcast, you kind of want to rein them in. So like if something goes off or it's very not focused, and I had one episode that, that happened and it's not super focused, you want to bring it back. So you always want to refocus and make sure that you're still like, cause it's, for your audience, like what they're saying might not be relevant. So you kind of want to be like, so for our audience, and for this, so yeah, to control it a bit and make sure that it's still going after what you want to go after and focusing on what you want to focus on instead of, going off on this tangent. So but if you have a casual podcast where you follow tangents, go for it. Follow it.
Okay. And another question, what do you do when there is like this a little bit of silence, that like the person that is interviewing, so like me, I like don't really know where to go right now, and the other person kind of finished, but like just stopped talking, and what's happening there? Like, how do you do that? Or do you just let it stop and then you edit it? Or do you try to make up something on the go? So, like, is this because sometimes I've interrupted people before when I didn't know that they were finished or not, because some people take long pauses. And then, so, like, sometimes you can kind of, like, know when they're finishing. And I've learned that a bit better, because some people are very clear about when they're done. They're like, boom, and then there's a beat, and then you continue into your next question. And then other people, like, sometimes take a long pause, and then, like, they're still going, and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, like, keep going. And I try and, like, maybe edit that out. But you, like, when you have like a non-talkative person, sometimes, I would say this is, and you're gonna laugh, I like preparing a lot, but this is why I like to do a call before, because I kind of like to feel out their personality. So I hopefully can know, am I gonna have to have a lot of questions? Like, am I gonna have to, really have a lot of follow-ups? Am I gonna have to have a lot of things, prepared to make sure that I can fuel this for 20 minutes at least. So that's why I'd like to know a little bit about them and their personality before, so I can tell, is it going to be like, do I have to really pick my energy up and draw something out of them? Do I have to have a lot of questions prepared? Are they very concise and boom, 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 so I would say the call before, like, and kind of gauging a little bit, like, should I have a lot prepared? Is this person verbose? Are they comfortable just riffing? It depends on the person. So I like to prepare in that way. I'm such a preparing person. Yeah, you are. I'm always like... I'm totally spontaneous. I'm like... Yeah. It goes. Okay, so that would conclude our fourth part. Yeah. And we'll get to fifth part, which will be the last one, I think. Part 5. Summary. So, welcome to the fifth part, and... please tell me, from your experience of podcasting, what questions did I miss? What would you ask yourself? I think about podcasting. About podcasting or about the person being interviewed, Maybe I should dig some more about yourself, or maybe I should dig some more business question or more technical question. What do you think? I think maybe on the technical side, I would have just asked a bit more of process questions. So process of getting the, editing it, how, you get it out to the person, maybe a bit more process questions, I guess. I'm trying to, I have no idea. I'm trying to remember all the questions we asked in each part. Maybe more process, yeah. I think because that's a fun thing for me. I know editing it and figuring out where to edit, how to edit. When do you because sometimes it goes on for too long, and sometimes I let it go, and then other times you have to kind of cut out certain questions that might have felt unnecessary. So deciding that moment of, is this a necessary question? Should I keep it? Is this necessary for my content? And that process of choosing what to keep and what to not keep, and scripting your intros, I think, is fun.
and yeah, I think that's pretty much my thing. Like, the only thing I would add is like, how do you know what to keep and how do you know what to cut, and also like,
so answer that question.
Yeah, like, oh, yeah.